Welcome to the show. I'm Nadia Giordana, producer of today's program. Our guest today is Comfort Dondo, founder of Phumulani, an organization that is fast becoming the voice of immigrants and refugees in America. Now, I want to turn the program over to our moderator and host, Jamela Pettiford. Take it away, Jamela.
All right. Greetings and welcome to It's a Woman's World. We are always excited that you choose to join us on this journey through the conversations to explore women in their world. And I am your host, Jamela Pettiford. And with me, I have some beautiful co-hosts. Nadia, Giordana, how are you?
I'm excited and delighted to be here talking with Comfort today.
Yes, as I. Melissa Nambangi, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm
Good to
doing
see you.
good. Yes, I'm doing good. And I'm looking forward to this show with this fascinating subject, fascinating actions.
Fascinating actions. And Candy Pettiford, how are you, Miss Candy?
I am so glad to be here because this is right down my alley. So get ready. I've got some good questions.
Yes, yes, and you always do. And last but not least, our special guest, the woman of the hour, the one who provides comfort to so many, Miss Comfort. How are you? And welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much. I am perfectly delighted to be here. Thank you
Mm.
so much for having me.
Yes.
It's a
Well, you
pleasure.
have been doing some impactful, life-changing work, not only, because of the things that you have experienced and realizing the need for it, but also taking a step back and saying, how can I take the power of pain and remove it and make it a purpose to help others on their journey? What a beautiful idea that you have come up with, and not only idea, but you have placed it in action. Would you talk a little bit about what it is that you do to provide comfort for so many?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, I guess I've lived into my name, Comfort. So
Yes.
thanks to my mom for giving me that name. It's serving a beautiful purpose to date. Um, so I am the founding executive director of Phumulani, Minnesota African Women Against Violence. And we work with women of African descent who are going through violent, abusive situations in their life. What we've been doing to offer comfort is to offer the very place that brings comfort, which is
Mm,
home, not shelter, but home. Yesterday
mm,
we had our first opening ribbon cutting of our first home in Plymouth. And we have been also providing similar safe spaces with other partnerships with other landlords. And that to me is the very first part of offering comfort to
mm,
any woman who might not feel safe in her own home. Yeah,
mm. And this is more driven by domestic violence or just displaced out of their home. Talk a little bit about that.
certainly. You see, African immigrant women, before we come to the United States, to Minnesota specifically, we have already gone through a lot of trauma
Mm,
that we're running away from. Even those who come here through an education like myself.
mm,
When I moved to Minnesota, I didn't know I had an invisible knapsack on my back, which was childhood trauma.
mm,
There's a lot of cultural things that happen that we don't even know is traumatic. So
mm,
when we move to the United States, we end up in a place where we are trying to figure out what is happening to our bodies,
mm,
mental health,
mm.
stress. Let me talk a little bit about what I just discovered from some research we're doing right now.
Okay.
A lot of African born women have experienced child sexual abuse
Mm,
that is unaddressed and not talked about. And it manifests itself in some patterns of bad relationships or bad habits. And we find that homelessness is very connected to things like addiction and not being able to cope with life stressors. So, in our organization, I like to say we don't put an umbrella on just domestic violence. I like to use the word trauma. Women who've gone through some traumatic incidents. And the reason why we keep the blanket umbrella is some of the women don't even know that it's trauma. But when you look at their behaviors and the challenges they're facing, ending up to being homeless, it's because of trauma. And that's the root of most of the issues we're dealing to trying to solve. Yeah.
Wow.
I
So
have a
what?
question. I was wondering, Comfort, how do these women who so desperately need your help, how do they find you, or do you find them?
Thank you. Yeah, so there's a couple of ways in which we find women or they find us. In our African tradition, we are oral historians, we are oral traditional people. So word of mouth really travels quickly. I have sisters in my WhatsApp just this morning, actually. She sent a message of a mom with two kids who's needing a place. My team is responding to that. It's a lot of word of mouth. The second part is we have partnerships with other programs. We have partnerships with other community leaders, like Mama Melissa, for example. If she knew someone in her community who's in trouble, she would reach me directly. We're very, very grassroots that way. This year, we've established another working relationship with places like Violence Free Minnesota, which has other programs. Places like the Center for Victims of Torture, which services women who are victims of torture or war crime or political violence coming from Africa. So this is how women come to us.
One of the things I know from working in a shelter is the number of rules you have in place so everyone can live together in peace and harmony. And then looking at your place, which has this wonderful atmosphere of being a home. I'm wondering, when women come there with children, do you have those rules that say stuff like you can only live here for 2 or 3 months, and this is what you can do and what you can't do? Because essentially the kids, being from cultures like ours, the kids immediately feel like family. They start intermingling, they start doing stuff together, and that might create some other issues for either the adults. So what are the rules you observe, and how do you make everybody feel comfortable with those rules?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mama Melissa. That is a very, very valid. I love your question. So the beauty about creating something new and transformative is you actually get to create some of those. I don't want to call them rules, but I want to call them maybe ground spaces of understanding with the women. So the first cohort of women that lived in the home, we actually sat down and we set what we call ground rules, ground ways of understanding each other. We get to actually interview one another and say, what is your hygienic level? What are you comfortable with? What makes you feel safe? One of the women said she needed to have a lock on her door, like a lock with a code that only she knew, for example. So we actually have the survivors create what it means for them to have safety. And so that way we don't end up mimicking the abuser. Because a lot of the African women said when they go to mainstream domestic violence shelters, there's a list of rules. And sometimes some of those rules feel and almost like mimic the abuser from where they're fleeing. At the same time, I also understand we have to be compliant with the Department of Human Services. We have to be compliant with the MDH and other, like the CDC. We have to be compliant with other things like that. For instance, we will not take a woman who has like maybe teenage sons because we have a woman who's got teenage daughters. The dynamics might be a little bit not the safest place for the other mom, right? So we try to find another place for her. I really believe in the scattered siting of women based on what their needs are. But in that home, I want to create a place where they feel at home, but also with some levels of understanding between the advocates and the other social workers that they might be working with. So we're creating the rules as we go, and we are also actually trying to make sure each cohort of women meet and discuss how when they do that, they take ownership. They
Yes.
take ownership. Then they don't feel like they have to do one more thing or break one more rule. And that's how we're doing our work. Yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, I'd like to know, getting a little more personal there, Comfort.
Yes,
Has
please.
something like this happened to you where you said, I have got to stop this. This is my call. I am going to start something. And was it just an idea that you just came up with, or was it something that actually happened to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It happened to me. I found myself in a mainstream domestic violence shelter, very tired, with two little toddlers. They were twins, and my son was 5. And I just wanted to sleep. I just wanted to put my head down.
Mhm.
I didn't want to focus so much on the intake. It was in the middle of the night. I just needed to lay my head. But I was greeted with a lot of paperwork, and I understand we have to follow protocols and procedures. But this particular night, I just wanted to sleep. That's what I would do for a woman if she comes in. I just have a good night's sleep. Tomorrow morning, when your mind is fresh, we'll talk and do intake. I was greeted with a lot of rules. And one of the rules that really made me go back to my abuser, where I almost then lost my life, was that I was pursuing my master's degree because I knew that that was the only way out of abuse. And the shelter space said I could not, my night class did not adhere to their curfew time. And so I had to choose between my future liberation through ending my master's or staying in a shelter. And I had to choose one. And many women have to choose between being safe and compromising their own very
Yes.
lives. So this is very personal for me, Miss Candy. But it's just not just based on me, it's also based on the stories and the many. We interviewed over 200 women of African descent nationally. And this topic comes up on why they will not go to shelter.
Well, then, have you written a book or something on this? And because this is this is powerful, Comfort. Have you written something that, and say, wow, I have a book, on my
I wrote a
life?
book. Yes, I wrote a book, Miss Penny. I
Yay.
Miss Candy. I wrote a book. It's called Facing the Giants.
Mm.
But Facing the Giants is very autobiographical. Yesterday I did a presentation to the New Jersey Coalition on Ending Violence, and in that moment when I was being asked questions, I got a revelation that I have to write something about how to. Maybe I'll be tapping into some of our elders with more wisdom than myself as Mama Melissa, how to take care of women from our region, the things that all domestic violence programs should know. So thank you for prophetically speaking into that space. I shall be writing that book.
Thank you.
Yes.
And we know that trauma takes on many different faces. And we know that it doesn't heal overnight. And even in the comfort of your program, there will need to be some level of aftercare or some type of continuous care or some type of divine sisterhood that is created that keeps a network of women together so that they can always feel safe. Because we know that sometimes old habits are hard to break, and if you picked one man that was this way, it could be that in some cases you might still be attracted to men who have certain types of attributes or possessive, toxic, traumatic behaviors. How do you provide an alumni care, a continuous care, even after they leave the comfort of your comfort, and they have gone on to live in their own lives now, and they're establishing their own lives? Is there some type of sisterhood that is created? Is there some type of alumni care? Is there some type of a continuous care or alert or contact that they can do, in which they can contact you and say, hey, I'm not doing as well. I'm not picking as well. I'm not dating right, or,
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for that question. The Pumulani, at Pumulani, we understand that healing is on a spectrum and is not never linear. And so I love your question because we have intentionally created a WhatsApp group that is closed for
nice.
survivors that we've worked with. And with each graduation, with each graduating cohort, we invite them and introduce them to the group as a newly graduating. So the women who started with Phumulani from 2018 are like the ones who are like the elders, right? Despite their age, but they have been on their own for longer. So we do two things. We provide coaches from our community, women that we have vetted and trusted. They're usually elders or church or religious leaders. They become like accountability partners for the women. We normally match the women to a mentor to the mentors based on an interview that they do and their interest and future interests, for instance. The second thing that we do is we ensure that we break the barrier that is usually caused by social isolation. Social isolation in the US is one of the major causes of depression and people falling into bad habits. So this year, for example, we are thinking about looking into 2023. We have already scheduled, we're going to be doing some dance classes, some African dance by a Liberian sister who teaches them. We're looking for how to be intentionally engaging to our women. We're going to be having them to take some self-defense classes, for example. We love doing vision boarding at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And then we are also trying to see, based on some of the women's needs, how to match them even to the right congregation that they might be francophone or. So we are constantly trying to make sure that they are not isolated, because I think it is in that isolation that the bad things can start to happen again. But that's what we do in Phumulani.
Comfort, you do so much. You've got your organization. You even volunteer on, I think, several different organizations. You travel. What or how do you find time for some self-care to keep yourself present and available to the women you're caring for?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Self-care. Self-care is so special and very central to my work because I realize you can never pour from an empty cup. So most of my self-care is really centered around my children. My children really, they force me to, I have to be present. If I always say, if I can take care of the women and I'm home and I'm depleted for my children, I am a public and private failure. So my self-care is really centered around doing piano lessons with my daughter, going for my son's basketball private coachings, and really having non-negotiable time for that time with my children. I also model self-care practices that are integrated in. I stopped saying I'm taking vacation. I'm practicing my self-care and I'm going away for some sunshine. But my self-care is every day in my home, because I'm raising two boys and a young lady, and I would like them to know that when mom says it's time for my self-care, it's my non-negotiable time. I have every morning non-negotiable meditation prayer time, and my children get to see me do that. Don't come to my room at this time. It's my non-negotiable time, and then they get to model that as well as they grow up, I hope. But that is how I practice my self-care. Yes.
And you bring about your children, and that gives me a really another thought. We know that the mothers are not the only ones who are experiencing this level of trauma. They're not the only ones who are experiencing and seeing and witnessing the behaviors that are being inflicted upon them. Does your program provide some care and some support systems and some behavior redirection for some of our children? Maybe some of our boys might, when they get angry, they hit, because they've seen that dad hits. Some of our girls tower or tend to be, maybe they don't stand up for themselves. They're quiet when it comes to someone hurting them. Is there some level of care that your program provides to the children of the mothers?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So whenever we have a mother who has got children, I'll start with the girl child. We do partner with programs like WISE with Miss Pamela Zeller. We do partner with programs like Semwangi's Global Fatherhood Foundation, where he teaches young men rite of passage how to be real men, who care about their community, about their family. We partner with those programs. At Phumulani, we also have partnerships with places like the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. For example, I just recently sent two of my mom's daughters that qualify for a young woman's initiative program that is run by the governor's office, because I see that these young women are leaders, and the leadership in them needs to be pulled out by them being in spaces with similar leaders their age. And so we do that. We also just recently partnered with a place called Sapria. Sapria heals women who have experienced child sexual abuse. And they have some great resources and workbooks that we are adapting to fit our community. We do have workbooks around consent. So we talk a lot about consent. In fact, we teach our mothers how to teach their sons about consent. We have a lot of materials that we have developed over the last year that we're going to be sharing and launching into next year with the community. So that's kind of how we do the work at Phumulani. It's a lot of leveraging of collaborative working partnerships with other partners who are good at that part of the work. And sometimes it goes beyond the dollars because sometimes we don't have the capacity. But that's how we've leveraged taking care. And thank you for that reminder.
Yeah,
We need to keep
yeah,
the reminder of the children. Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. Wow.
Well, I have a strange kind of a question. Okay, let's say that we have a white woman, but who has been with an African man and her children are of that descent. Is she turned away, or how do you deal with her knowing that she's white, but her children are of her husband's descent? How is that handled?
Not not a strange question at all, Miss Patty. It just massages my brain, so I love that. In fact, I'm very visual, so when you're asking a question, I'm already looking. I'm actually
Yes.
looking at the clients. I actually have such or a few of those kind of women, and
Okay.
we do not turn anybody away because that would be
That's right.
discriminatory.
Yes, it would.
We work with the woman. Actually, she was referred to us from elders because the husband was from our community. So she comes in and we assess and see some of her needs are. As Mama Melissa said earlier on before we started the show, you find that all women across socioeconomic, ethnic, religious background, we all have the same story, just different players, different chapters. And so, despite her ethnicity, we have common challenges, and that we help her with. If we assess and we see that maybe there's a component that we are not able to fulfill, then we most definitely make a referral.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful.
Thank you.
And so, with all the things that you are doing, you are helping so many. Within the help that you are providing the women, are many coming back with testimonies of the ways that your work of comfort has truly changed their lives?
That's my favorite part. As
Mm.
a woman, as a survivor, as a childhood survivor, sometimes there's a worth issue that happens where you're
Yes.
much more harder on yourself. You're more critically analyzing things as if you're not doing enough. But it's when
Mm,
those testimonies come in.
mm,
It's when I see our recent sister Primrose, who's a survivor of acid burn, send me random WhatsApp messages to tell me how I make her feel. It's those things that really mean a lot to me and they lift me up. Not
mm.
in any self-serving manner, but just a reflection of the work. So we do get a lot of testimonies, and I would absolutely love to share some of those in words. I can send out just to read the beautiful words of reflection. Sometimes I get testimonies when I go to a local community program. Like last Sunday, I visited a church, and the sister came to me and say to your pastor, "If you know what this young lady did for me," and
Mm.
she has since remarried. And it was
Mm,
7 years ago. I was so it made my whole month. So we do have a lot of
Wow.
really beautiful testimonies. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is there, uh, I'm sure there is, I've been to your website. Tell us about your website and how people can get more information if they want to look you up after the program.
Yes, so we can be found at www.pumulani.org. And Pumulani is P as in Paul, HUM like Mary, UL like Larry, AN like Nancy, I.org. And we look forward to some traffic on our website. Please reach out um, and share with us any feedback, anything you'd like to see on the website. And we also welcome your partnership. We cannot
Mm.
do this work alone. It takes a village. And I think together working collaboratively, end violence. Yes.
Well, those collaborations, the resources, the deeply rooted ways that you help to enrich, enhance, and encourage women to be their best and most beautiful self. We know that Phumulani represents the comfort of others and the comfort of many. And so we want to continue to thank you and to encourage you and to celebrate you in all the ways that you help people come out of pain and turn their pain into purpose. And so again, we want to thank all of you for being with us on It's a Woman's World as we continue to change the world one woman at a time. We will look forward to seeing you again, and thank you for being the comfort that changes our community.
Thank you.